Good evening, and we will call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It's October the 6th at 7 p.m. Ask the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Sandra Etheridge.
Here.
Joe Edmond.
Here.
Ron Haza. Greg Michelle.
Here.
Mike McLaughlin.
Here.
Richard Hawk.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Here.
Juliet Sofan.
Seraphine.
Celestine.
That's
Yeah.
And we have Rick Schroeder, City Administrator, and Alex Blue from Council here tonight. Our first item is citizens to be heard. I don't believe we have anyone this evening. So we can move to item number 4, which is discussion and action on the minutes. The regular meeting of the P&Z, September 1st, 2015. Should have found this material in your, this document in your packet of materials. If there are any corrections, edits, changes, please call those to our attention now, or someone can make a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Joe.
I've read the minutes and I move that they be approved as presented.
Second.
Michael seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes from the September 1 meeting as submitted, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Item 5 this evening is discussion and action on a request by VDC Bear County Reserve for single business use monument signage pursuant to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, Signs, Section 6649, Commercial Signs, Single Business Use Monument Type for Paso Fino Apartment Homes located at 10729 Shanefield Road. Rick, were you going to speak to this at all?
No, we've included our agenda item request forms on the dais.
Great. And is there anyone representing the business here tonight if we have questions? Great. So you should have found in your material both the application as well as the review and recommendation from city staff. I point out, and I was talking with Councilman Blue earlier, that remember this is distinct from an entryway signage, which is what we've been have seen recently. This is a different type of sign. It's commercial single business use monument signage. So I'd first ask if there are questions that people have. We can ask the representative to speak to us about that, or we can talk about it ourselves up here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ron.
Just to verify the location of the sign.
Sorry, the location.
Yeah.
The on the property or where the property is?
Well, where the sign is located on the property.
Okay. Why don't, if you don't mind coming on up, and if you could put your name and address on the record for us, and then you can help answer these questions.
My name is Doug Payton, and I represent Signs West, who filed for the permit application.
Appreciate it. And do you have a business address for us?
Permanent address?
Business address is fine.
It's 11926 Worth Road, Austin, Texas.
Great.
Now, if I'm looking at this right, you have one sign, and it's going to be basically to the left of the driveway going in?
That's correct.
There's a page.
It's the back page.
Okay.
And is that illuminated?
No, sir.
And I don't see it, is there landscaping around the base of that?
I'm not providing that. The developer is.
And we will include that in a motion. There's a requirement that there be some landscaping around it, as long as they're aware of that. Fine. And the signage itself, in terms of the size, is that including the what I'll call the support columns or the design columns on each end, or is it just referring to the Paso Fino sign?
Everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Michael?
I was looking at the background information that we have, and by the numbers right there, the sign is over the limit. I have a little bit of concern with that, especially this, to me, it's in a new area that, I think was a big reason that we tried to get that annexed, is so we can control the look and the presentation, if you will, of the businesses and the signage that comes into that area eventually. So, with that, to me, it's over the limit that we've had in our ordinances. I was wondering if anybody had any thoughts on that.
Say again?
I was asking which limit he was referring to.
The square footage,
So by code,
section 66-49.
105.
the reading from the code, for size, surface area of signage shall not exceed 84 square feet, including sign, face, frame, mounting hardware, everything at 84. So this exceeds it by, this is at 118, is that what it was?
34 square feet.
So it's too big. So the commission can decide how it wishes to proceed here. We can ask for them to stay within code, reduce it to 84 square feet as a maximum. We do have the ability to allow for a variance to exceed by, approximately 20%? 25%, would that need council approval if we went that route? So, and 25% larger than 84 would put it at around 100, 105 square feet. Smaller, but more than the 84. So that's what we're working with up here as the options. I guess one thing I would ask you from a design standard, from your perspective as a sign, someone who works with signs, reducing it to 84 square feet, how would you go about doing that with a sign like this?
Ooh, I'm not sure, because the sign's already built, it's a one-piece structure, and it's made out of high-density urethane foam, and it was cast and poured and shipped out down here from South Dakota.
That's already done.
Well,
So I was under the understanding that the sign face, that was limited to 84 square feet, because next to us is a subdivision that has a monument sign that's larger than what we have. That's for a subdivision and not a single business.
And Mr. Chairman, I guess that's one of my questions is, forgive me for being so new here, is it because it's an apartment complex, is that why it's single business as opposed to residential?
correct. So there's a distinction in our code between subdivision and what we would call a subdivision entry sign and signage for an apartment complex, which is treated akin to a business.
The subdivision, the residential subdivision entry signage stipulates that it's for single family, so.
Well, we're certainly within our, be appropriate for us to take whatever steps we feel is appropriate for the city. But it is important to be cognizant of the fact that we have a sign that's been made, so we need to figure out how we wish to proceed with that. It's unfortunate that the folks who actually were responsible for the property weren't aware of this ordinance and what the requirements were, but here we are with a sign that exists.
I would like to point out that this is set back 27 feet, so it's quite a ways back off the road.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
did he say they intend to do the landscaping around what they have, what they're presenting?
Yes.
do they intend to do the landscaping?
Right, we intend to put the landscaping in,
Right, well, the landscaping is,
because it's not in,
Pretty minimal.
it's not in what's presented.
right, but that has to be part of whatever signage is there,
Right.
which doesn't sound like a big deal.
It's just we're a sign company and we're not doing landscaping, that's, they have a
Somebody else
landscape
doing it.
company on site.
We know that happens.
Rick, procedure-wise, first off, any variance that exceeded 25% would have to go through council, correct?
Yes.
And I gather that an determination or an action by the commission that the property owners did not agree with, they would have the ability to appeal that to council.
Yes.
It's not a Board of Adjustments issue. Any other questions at this point?
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Just one other thing, a couple of people have touched on the landscaping. Granted, it's not in your job jar to do that, I got that. But in general, when we see a sign request, it will have the landscaping with it, so we know what we're approving. And right now, granted, it is, 2 feet is minimal compared to the sign, compared to subdivision entry signs and things like that, but nonetheless, we're kind of approving perhaps something sight unseen. A lot of times we'll see at least a drawing or something like that of what's intended to be the final product. So I'm not sure how you would handle that. Again, I understand you're responsible for the sign, but from up here I see that it's kind of a sight unseen when the landscaping is supposed to be part of the sign.
All right, I think we're good, so if we have more, we'll call you back, I'll make you stand up there.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah,
Rick,
sounded good.
what was the square footage of the apartment complex across the street, further down at Hausman? What was that signage? I guess off of Hausman. What was the square footage of that signage? Would you be able to recall that?
Are you talking about Elm Hollow?
Yes, that one, well, it has the big cistern on this side, but on the Hausman side, I was just wondering that square footage.
If I recall, that was a smaller cistern.
Did it have a
So
very-
it was probably within the 84 square feet or very close to that, but that was all handled as a creative sign application. That wasn't
Right.
part of the
Right.
regular sign code.
So that's how they handled it. They came in with a creative sign application. So that could be a possibility, but this wouldn't really be considered creative sign.
We would steer clear of that because this is clearly not a creative sign.
Right.
It's just a normal sign.
I was just wondering that square footage of that sign. Because it seems, it's very visual. You can see it and seems large enough, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if I was just to guess, I would say that it's probably within the 80 square feet, 84
Okay.
square feet, because that's 8 by 8. I mean,
Right.
it's larger than 8 by 8, so, and that
Right.
cistern's not terribly big.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Further discussion or a motion at this time?
Call for the question.
Go ahead if you want to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I recommend denying the motion on the request by VDC Bear County Reserve, I think that's an I, LP for single business use monument signs pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs, Section 66-49 commercial signs, single business use monument type for the Paso Fino Apartment Homes Complex located at 10729 Shanefield Road, San Antonio, Texas, more particularly described as CB 4449D, Block 16, Lot 7, known as the Shanefield Apartments.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so discussion on the item, on the motion, Michael?
Like I say, I don't have a problem with the sign per se. It's a matter of, we've gone to, and you can see on future agenda items here, we're wrestling with a few things like that. We want a certain feel and look to the city, and that's what we're trying to get to with these ordinances. So that puts us where we are, really.
Ron? Others, discussion on the motion? If So the motion is to disapprove the request by VDC Bear County Reserve for single business use monument sign pursuant to section 6649 commercial signs for Paso Fino apartment homes located at 10729 Shanefield Road. All in favor of the motion signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for being here, and I'm sure that you could follow up with city staff on next steps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6 tonight. Discussion and action on a request by Helotes CrossFit for wall signage pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, Section 66-51, subsection B, wall signs for property at 12266 East Bandera Road. Rick, I presume your packet speaks for itself on this. Is anyone here representing that business tonight? You have before you the staff review as well as the application for the sign, as well as the renderings. Are there any questions or comments about the wall signage as presented, or anything else related to this item? One question I have, and just make sure I have it right, that this being a wall sign does not require the business address. Is that correct? So there is no specific requirements regarding content of signs.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no other discussion, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the request by Helotes CrossFit for wall signage pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, signs, Section 6651, subsection B, wall signs for property located at 12266 East Bandera Road, Helotes, Texas.
Mike seconds. Any discussion, Jeff, Mike? Anyone else? The motion is to approve the request by Helotes CrossFit for wall signage pursuant to 6651 of the sign ordinance, subsection B, wall signs for property located at 12266 East Bandera Road. All in favor of the motion, please signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Item 7 tonight, discussion and action on a request by Honey Care Properties for conceptual design plan pursuant to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Article 9, architectural review by Planning and Zoning Commission for the construction of an assisted living facility on property located at 12445 FM 1560, including site plan, building design, and exterior lighting. I assume you gentlemen are here for that. We have questions, which we might. Rick, anything, or just go with what you have prepared? The new normal. So, comments, questions, discussion?
I'm just gonna say, look, it had been previously approved. The changes and modifications from what I saw is only the outdoor lighting.
No, there's some modifications to the columns, but in my opinion, the overall design is relatively the same. They're utilizing what appears to be hardy board siding, with a rock wainscot, which is pretty much identical to what's already there. This is a second building that would be next to the current, assisted living facility, but this would be a memory care facility like that.
Be a what, I'm sorry?
Memory care.
This is an assisted living facility. It's not, it's essentially the.
We're gonna put it on record. Name and business address is fine.
Okay, Barry Starrock, Starrock Architect, 816 Cameron, Suite 247, San Antonio, 78212.
Thank you.
There's a slight difference in licensing. Memory care falls under the state's regulations for Alzheimer's. This is an assisted living facility, which is what we have there right now.
So
I
there
was
is no
under the ass-
difference.
I'm sorry, I was under the assumption it was memory care regardless, it really doesn't.
Yeah, and I was
Well,
gonna,
this-
For the record.
It says it on here.
yeah, that's,
Yeah.
cause that's okay, but in the past, we'd heard that this was coming and that, you know, it'd have wrought iron fences around it because of certain state regulations and for,
We
you know,
still have the wrought iron.
but I mean, as far as,
So this
as
is,
far
the-
as, so people couldn't leave at will and stuff like that, that type of fence.
is it
The
being
fencing is
marketed
around the
as a
perimeter of the-
memory
Yeah,
care
fence around
facility?
the
Oh, okay, all right, I couldn't tell, all right.
Is it being marketed as a memory care facility?
No, it's being marketed as an assisted living facility. There's a distinction.
Right, no, because the documents have the other on
Memory
it.
care on them.
The documents specifically state memory care. We're looking at, for example, information site plan.
Which we received in February, this site
True.
plan. But has it changed since then?
The ones that I have, they're
You want to see?
assisted living.
Maybe we
Something's
have a
changed
different
then.
one?
I've got in here, it says assisted living.
Right here it says assisted living. Says fence,
Yeah.
stone
Memory
columns,
care.
Oh, I'm sorry, you,
There's
Bring it
different
the wrong
versions.
you got the wrong drawing.
Yeah,
These
I've got-
are the drawings that you should have.
No,
Yeah.
no,
You're looking at the old.
let me,
set.
okay, first, please,
That is,
you have on your dais the concept that was approved in March.
Previously.
Because I wanted the commission to be able to see
Thank
the
you.
differences in the two buildings. It was considered a memory care back
But it
then, that
still
is a
says it.
use, that isn't necessarily related to building design.
Right.
But what you have here is, I just wanted you to see the difference in the design, so you can see why they were, what they were changing.
Okay, thanks, all right.
You look very down.
There you go, that,
yeah, so the
Thank
design
you.
did change quite a bit.
I'm not
But
sure
it's
what I
still-
have. My materials are the memory ones. I don't have a
Keep going.
different
There's two
renderings.
Should have two
Including-
sevens.
You do on the next one. Look at the next one.
Included in your packet was the original submittal. If you see by the agenda item request form, it talks about what was approved in March of 15.
okay.
And that is why it's coming back, because there was a change in the design.
Thank you for clarifying.
We had 7 and 7, not 7A and B. Okay.
Yeah, generally, it kind of looks like some of the rooms are a bit larger and,
The rooms in the assisted living are a little bit larger than
Mhm.
memory care.
So basically, this was assisted living, now memory care, or vice versa.
Vice
It was
versa.
Memory care now.
Okay.
Now that we got that straightened out, other questions or
Mr.
comments,
Chairman.
please?
On the additional parking, there are those, what's the ratio, I guess, and you may be limited by regulation, the ratio of handicap to what general visitors can
Right,
park?
we've provided the handicap that's required under
Mhm.
the, that is
And I'm just curious, I know you have to do that, but at times it seems like there's not enough regular parking for, versus the handicap. Just the normal visitors can't.
Well, we've added additional parking
Mhm.
beyond what's required at this facility to help with that.
Okay.
We're, in terms of what accessible parking is required, we're bound by statute right now.
Yeah.
We've exceeded
I'm
minimum
more
required.
curious than anything. Thank you.
Yeah, we've met the minimum, and the way that works is if there's a fraction over, then you
Mhm.
have to add another space.
Yeah.
Joe, question?
No, I understand, he's exceeded the minimum required, that was.
One other thing, I just want to make sure, the lighting proposed around the new structure, it will,
It's the same.
Matching
close
what's
to-
already
yeah,
there.
it's the full cutoff lighting and meets the ordinance. And it will look almost exactly like, the pole height is the same, pictures are very similar.
Maybe just so we don't overlook anything, Mr. Chairman,
please.
maybe he would just tell us what's different between what we submitted and what he's submitting now.
Sure. If we can go to A 1.0, that's this has a site plan that has both facilities on it. The one at the kind of the bottom of the page is the existing one, the one at the top of the page is the new one. And it's basically the same plan, it's a prototype, so facility are a little bit smaller than the rooms in the assisted living facility. The plan of the kitchen and the way the plan works is a little more open in the assisted living, so the residents are a little more free to move around, whereas in the memory care, the areas that people can go into are more limited for occupancy. A 3.0, I already kind of discussed the plan. The A 4.0, the roof plan is a bit different than the one we have, that just reflects the changes in the plan. And the elevations of this building A5 are very similar to the other ones. The roof line is just a bit different from this one. The memory care has a hip roof and this has a gable roof. But as Rick said, the exterior of this one is cement board or hardy plank backwood siding with a limestone, it's called Lampasas stone, wainscot on the bottom. It will work exactly the same. There's not a lot of differences. A lot of the differences come in the way the facility's licensed, but from a facility standpoint,
A real quick question, and maybe this will fall into other staff with the city, Rick can answer this, but, and I know it's not part of necessarily what we're considering, but I want to ask anyway. As far as the landscaping, once all the buildings are done and everything, is there going to be more of a formal looking landscape?
there's a conceptual landscaping plan.
Or did I miss it?
The next page.
It wasn't included in the packet, they don't review that, but there is a landscaping plan.
Okay, and that's fine. If it's going to come in the process, that's fine.
We have it.
Okay,
We have it, but
okay.
We'll have trees and shrubbery and those kinds of things. And we want to make it a very nice facility so that the residents can use the outdoors as well as the.
Right, as I live close to there and I see that, and I've kind of wondered about that. But
Yeah, and
granted, we have a process for it, so.
Yeah, and the owners that actually, added lamps to the railings and things to the facility. I think it's very attractive.
Other questions? I'll make sure I've got this clear, because I think I'm a little confused. This is not a memory care facility.
Correct.
Assisted.
It had been, and now it is not.
Assisted.
Sandra,
I was gonna make a
go
motion.
for it.
Okay. I move to approve a request by Honey Care Properties LLC for a conceptual design plan pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Article 5 architectural review by located at 12445 in FM 1560, Helotes, Texas 78023, more particularly described as CB 4481B, Block 3, Lot 263, per plat 7900201. Lot 263 has been used 04481-2032630, including the following: site plan, building design, and exterior lighting. I'm at
Joe, second. Is there further, any discussion on this motion? First Sandra, Joe, Michael?
I have one last question, if I might. I know we have a motion on the floor. I wanted to ask about this earlier, and I forgot to do that. There's an entrance on Farm to Market Road 1560, and I guess that complies with whatever proximity to Paragon.
By the fire department, and that was requested by them so that you have to come off and move through for
Okay.
fire access. That's not intended for personal vehicles or whatever, it's
Mhm.
emergency access. That gives you two ways in.
Sure. So given that, is it going to be, I don't know, some sort of a crash gate or limited entry way off of 1560?
There'll be a Knox lock on it that the fire department can use to open it, no one else
Okay.
will be able to use it. And there'll be some signage out there that says, not a.
Okay, that's good, because there's a lot of traffic right now on 1560 and in that area, so that would help.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
and it's not intended for public access off it.
Okay.
It's for the fire department.
Thank you.
Other discussion? The motion is to approve the request from Honey Care Properties for conceptual design plan pursuant to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Article 9, architectural review by Planning and Zoning Commission for the construction of an assisted living facility on property located at 12445 North, FM 1560, including site plan, building design, and exterior lighting. All in favor of the motion, please signal aye. Opposed? Motion carries and is approved. Thank you for being here to answer our questions.
Thanks.
Item 8 tonight is discussion and action on amendments to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, signs, 6651, subsection B, commercial signs in or on windows or doors. You'll recall that we first tackled this issue, I think you were with us, Jeff, maybe, in July-ish. And now we finally have a little time to talk about it. We'd asked city staff to do some research and other municipalities on their approaches to these issues. And Rick has a presentation, yes?
Yes.
Thank you for that research.
Okay, included on your dais is the request form for this particular item. Again, we started looking at this in July of 2015, and then we made some attempts to look at it again in August and September, but we were not successful at the time. So here it is, October.
We had good reason why we didn't do it then. We were busy, as you recall.
Oh, no, I know we were busy. I'm just saying we've been trying to get this reviewed for some time. But anyway, at that time, the commission asked the Development Services Department to do a review of other cities as to how they handle inter-on window signage or inter-on signage on doors as well. And so the cities that actually responded were Balcones Heights, Castle Hills, Castroville, Converse, Chavano Park, Almas Park, and Universal City. Balcones Heights has a maximum of 10 square feet or 30% of the window area, whichever is less, which I was actually surprised by because that's a pretty restrictive requirement. And if anybody's gone down Fredericksburg Road lately, you know that every window has signs on it. So I'm not sure that their enforcement is the greatest. But Castle Hills, they have no regulations per se, but they do treat window signage as banner signage, which again, you can see in your packet is a little odd because I'm not sure the two equates. But Castroville, they look at window signage and it's counted against the total wall sign area that's permitted. So if you have a tenant space and your linear footage is, let's say, 80 linear feet, in our ordinances, we would allow for a maximum of 80 square feet, and let's say they only used 40 square foot for their wall sign, so the remaining 40 square feet they could use for window signage. That's how they would handle it in Castroville. That being said, they do have a maximum, the addition is a maximum of 40% of the window area. So here we have something that's a little different, right? Not only do they have a total square footage, but they also have what percentage of each window that you can take up with window signage, which from an enforcement perspective is a little onerous for me. But the city of Converse, they have a maximum of 50% of all window area along the same wall. So if you have 100 square feet of window area, you're allowed 50 square feet of window signage. Chavano Park does not have any regulations. Almas Park has a maximum, this is a little odd. Almas Park has a maximum width, or excuse me, a width maximum for windows signage. So they allow only 40% of the total width of storefront windows. So basically you take a window, you divide it in half basically, and that's kind of the size that you can have centered in the window. But they don't have a maximum square footage. And then Universal City has no regulations at all. So what we did is we took that, which was pretty varied and odd, very odd in how some cities look at window signage, and we came up with the ordinance that we have here. Now, this is just a out of the chute proposal. This doesn't mean that we're necessarily advocating one or the other, but we are looking at this with an eye towards enforcement. We have one code enforcement officer, and what I'm trying to do here is make it easy as somebody's driving down the road, say, well, they're clearly out of compliance. Okay, that's what I'm looking at here. Commission and council, of course, may disagree with me. So I want to go through here under purpose. We have added to that definition to say to identify a business or organization as the occupant of the space on the other side of the window, which that's the way it currently reads. The problem with that is no window signage, as you can see on the window signage that's currently in the city, no window signage really says the name of the business. It advertises a special or something like that. So I think it's, if they already have wall signage and monument signage and multi-tenant monument signage, I mean, I think it's, they're not gonna necessarily also advertise the name of the business. So what we did was, or door, on the other side of the window, or door, to advertise the business or organization's special event or sale. I think that probably makes a little bit more sense. Under size, it used to say a maximum area of 24 square feet, or half the area of the window or door. I'm trying to get away from the maximum square footages, and the reason I'm trying to get away from the maximum square footages is because I don't want to have a code enforcement officer out there with a measuring stick measuring each window sign. So what I would prefer to do is do something as we proposed. It says no more than 50% of the area of the window or door to which the in or on window or door sign is attached. I don't care necessarily about the percentage, but I would request that the percentage be easy, manageable. So 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100% is easy for us to look at and say it is in compliance or it's not. 40%, 20%, I mean, that takes a considerable amount of work to figure out if it's in compliance. It's easy to look at a window and say, well, more than 50% of that window is covered. So that is what we are offering there. If you want to make 25%, that's fine. We can look at a window and cut it into fours in our mind and say this clearly is above the 25%. It doesn't really matter to me on the percentage. Then we added in window or door area used for the address, hours of operation, and open or closed status is excluded from the minimum size limit. That was already there. We just added in the term window or door area, and I think that makes sense. Most businesses have hours of operation and open or closed status. We didn't really change anything on height. I was concerned that 8 feet. Originally, I was concerned that 8 feet may be too little, because some of the windows that we have in Helotes, particularly our bigger buildings, are above the 8 foot. But in the city of Helotes, we tend to try to look at something a little bit more pedestrian friendly, and it's always been a maximum of 8 linear feet, so I'm okay with that. I think that's going to be problematic, though, for like a business like CVS that has windows that are considerably, that start at a considerably higher level than 8 square feet. And maybe the commission is okay with the 8 linear feet. But what we did change it to is we just added window or on the door, because what we noticed throughout the existing ordinance is that it's supposed to apply to in or on windows and also windows within doors, and half the time it didn't reference door. So we added or on the door here. Number. We used to say 1 sign per street or pedestrian way which the building faces or abuts. From my perspective, I just don't think that's realistic for current businesses. And actually, if you look at existing businesses, most of them that have been in existence here for some time have way more than just 1 sign per street, which would be Bandera Road. So what I'm proposing here is that you just put 1 sign per window or door. Again, from an enforcement perspective, it's easy. We look at a window, if it has more than 1 sign in it, we can say you're out of compliance.
Can I ask, do we need to include that, what they talk about the use for the address, hours, or operation?
No, because
Okay.
we have excluded that.
On the one before, on number 2?
Number 2.
Or no?
Yes.
On size?
Yes, is excluded from the maximum size limit. We could add that in here just
Well, I
for
don't know if
clarity.
I don't know if it's needed, but I was just wondering that because of the number. Might be.
That's probably a good catch, so I would go ahead and add that in there, that
Okay.
those types of signs are excluded from the one.
Like that same
Max.
sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Location, We didn't change anything within location. Basically, it says that this window sign has to be within the window. The design, or type of design, we didn't modify that section. And that's really kind of a hard thing to regulate, because we like when you have a sale for half off chicken nuggets, I mean, we can't really expect that to be sort of to look in a hill country type style, right? There's Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever, they have just their posters that they send out and they put them up on the inside of the window. So I don't necessarily think that the design is critical here. I think what's more critical is the number and the size, but that's of course my personal opinion. Lighting, it used to say indirect, internally illuminated, or neon. I would remove the lighting, I would remove it and say no lighting is allowed except on signage displaying open or closed status of business or organization. I've never seen hours of operation lit, and I've never seen, let's see, what does it say? I've never seen hours of operation, address on the window itself, or open and closed status, or excuse me, hours of operation of the address actually lit on a window. I always see open or closed status lit. So I think it makes sense to allow that for open or closed status, but the lighting, very rarely have I seen a window sign that had lighting in it. Most of them are just placed onto the window, taped, or however they put them up. So I would recommend doing rid of the lighting. Landscaping, of course, is not applicable. Duration, we added in the term organization instead of office just to keep the language the same. And permit. This used to say that a permit has to be obtained from the city and it has to go through P&Z and all of that. If we're really talking about sales or specials for a business, I think it's a bit unrealistic to think that every one of those people is going to come in and get P&Z approval. So we have modified that to say no permit is required for inner on window or door signage. Now that, just because we're saying that no permit is required doesn't mean that we can't enforce the regulations. It basically falls then on the code enforcement officer to be proactive in the sense that he's looking to make sure that they only have one window per sign, or one sign per window, and that it complies generally with the maximum size limit. And if you look at and this is certainly no excuse, but if you look at all the existing businesses in Helotes that have been here since the 80s, a lot of them have window signs that I've never once sent a permit request to P&Z. Perhaps that's my oversight, but it is what it is. So those were the recommendations that we have made to this. It's relatively simple. Again, staff is not advocating 50% of the window or 25% of the window. We're just wanting something that is easily enforceable in a vehicle as the code enforcement officer is driving it by or making a routine inspection. I don't want to have to go out there with a yardstick to determine what square footage is versus what the actual size of the window is. I think sometimes we get ourselves in a situation where we make unenforceable ordinances, and I'm trying to make an enforceable ordinance here.
Mr. Chairman? Now, I've noticed this around town. There are places where there's a bar in the middle of the window.
Is that two
Is
windows?
that one window or two windows?
I personally would say if you're sticking to the letter of the ordinance, that would be two windows, because technically it's two individual panes of glass.
Okay.
I mean, that's how I would define it.
Right.
I think it would be very hard to define. I don't know how you would define that as not.
Well, that's, I just wonder if we were going, or.
I would be looking at panes of glass.
Okay.
I was gonna ask that question. So for an example, on some of these pictures, like the Advanced Auto Parts, they have couple wall signs, and then they have.
Those wall signs
Don't count, or?
don't count those because those are out of compliance, period.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
That's a wall sign. If you recall, when we discussed this, I said I wasn't gonna necessarily sick the code enforcement officer on
Yeah.
this stuff until we got through the inner on window signage, and then we'll make a proactive attempt to go into each business. So that on the wall is a wall sign that shouldn't be there.
So for,
But they still has a lot of stuff on the window.
well, so on those windows, like the second bottom pane is taking up 100% of so they would need to go down to half of that. And then on the upper window pane, that is more than 50%, so they'd have to go down on those.
Yeah.
Okay, but they would still be able to put a sign in each of those windows,
Yes.
correct?
Because again,
Okay,
I
but
would
they'd
look-
have to be basically half this size.
That's correct. From my perspective, because I would be telling our code enforcement officer, a window is a window, which is a pane of glass.
Right.
So,
And they can put one in each one of those windows. So AutoZone, they have,
2 signs.
well, 2, or it could be, yeah, I guess it's 2 signs.
plus the door. Remember?
So, right, but so they would need to reduce those sign sizes
Yes.
and then down to 1. Okay. So for an example, the Comet, they have larger, what if it's a see-through, sign? You know what I, like a
Signage.
see-through sticker, but it has writing in it.
Yeah, I would argue a sign is a sign is a sign.
Okay,
Well,
just
I-
wondering.
I
If
mean,
it
this
conveys a
is-
message, it's the sign.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Now, I would, honestly, internally, we would probably work with businesses that were like bars or other types of businesses that the state or the federal government requires that they post certain things on their
Yes,
doors.
yes.
I would probably say, we're not gonna look at that, but we're gonna, if you're running a special or whatever, that'll be your one sign.
So-
So, I think that there has to be, and there is always going to be an element of gray
Yeah.
in signage. So if it was a state mandate, I would probably exempt that.
So like
And say
now,
you could still have your other.
hiring, would that count? Or that might just be,
The now hiring would count, and
It
normally
would.
those are gonna be banners.
okay.
How would that count? It says right here, it says to advertise the business or organization special event or sale.
No, that would count as that if they posted
Or if
it
it's in the
on the
window.
window, if they stuck it to the window, I would say that was an enter on window sign.
Comment, yeah, but not, then that would not be under this
You
ordinance.
say those signs take up half the window?
It would, because I think we have some leeway in the purpose statement. The purpose statement is never, you're never gonna be able to describe everything in a purpose statement for how that ordinance covers, but it is an enter on window sign.
No, forget
Right,
about that.
but, and if you look at,
The square-
the Zumba
like
place,
that sign.
nothing
How
along
much
there
they take up?
signifies an advertisement.
I'd say we take
It conveys a message, like Mike said, but it doesn't give any specials
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that, so the way that code has been presented, this wouldn't even count.
It would be regulated by enter on window signs, because I would argue that would advertise the business itself, to identify a business or organization. It's, that particular thing is talking about what services they provide to the public. They do different types of whatever it says on there. And it talks about the different types of activities they have in their business.
Which one?
The Zumba,
Let me ask, just, if you look at the, if I could reference a couple of them, the cleaners.
Comment?
Yeah. This one. If you could just help me count and make sure I'm not sure how many signs I'm looking at. So if we were to use this, forget the size issue, but just the number of signs. I'm looking at the one of, there's only one of Comet. There's a door, and then there's 2 windows.
Mm-hmm.
So on the window at the left that has open,
That would be exempt.
right, but granted, what else is considered a sign there? Is that, I can't tell if that's,
Everything else on that window besides open.
okay, is that, I just can't tell if the words everyday value are on the
Yeah, that whole
glass.
thing is actually one
That's one
posted
piece.
sign.
That's
That's
one
easy.
sign.
Okay, how about on the door?
The door, you have the hours of operation, that would be exempted. You do have, since 1957, and you have the portion below the Joint Comet Express. Those are all signs.
So just by this, that would be considered 2 signs, and
That's
we would
correct.
say you gotta go down to 1. And then on the right,
The drop-off, that's actually a 24-hour drop-off
That's
mailbox. So I wouldn't,
right,
for the sake of argument, I would just say, okay, we're not gonna consider that a sign, but they
Right.
have a sign right next to it. And then they have now hiring, they have 24-hour drop-off, and then they have a lot of those stickers in there.
stickers don't count, or stickers do count.
I would argue stickers would count. They're
It's a
signs.
sign.
Like a
Now-
Better Business Bureau
Like for
sticker
credit
and
cards
a
or-
whatever
No,
sticker. and-
exactly, but that's what I'm saying, you cannot make an ordinance that is gonna include everything. On a practical basis, staff is gonna say, if they have a Chamber of Commerce sticker, we're not gonna, I would say that is probably not gonna count that as a sign. And as long as you enforce uniformly, you don't run into any problems.
But you don't have to include that in your,
Sure, you could also, you could.
you could have
we
named
could-
all of them.
We could revise the ordinance to say, stickers of organizations or something like that, and
Hey.
credit card stickers don't apply, but I guarantee you there's gonna be something that we're not thinking of that we should have thought of that. So, when it comes down to it, staff is going to enforce what we believe is common sense.
So,
And if council has a problem with that, then of course that'll be something that they can come down on me for. But we try to look at something on a commonsensical basis. Yes, ma'am.
so on these wall signs that you're showing us on a gas station, those are gonna have to be removed?
Those are wall signs. You're talking about the X on a cross. That's a
Mhm.
wall sign.
Different.
That
So
needs
those-
to come down.
Yeah, but for an example, Gable's Ice Cream, that all is fine, because they're not taking up.
Yeah, they would be less than half. Those should be fine. They're single panes of glass. They do have they did have a permit for their banner. So yes, they would be fine.
Mike,
We take signs down from the window and put them on the pump. We
Say
take-
that one more time.
They take signs down from the window after you put it on the pump.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine.
I won't give them any ideas. Generally on the size and maybe even to the number, what I'm looking for is something that gets rid of clutter. You know, they need to advertise certain things, got it. But, to me, 50% is a dangerous number because some windows are pretty large. So 50% of it, you have to know what 100% is first, so you're gonna get in trouble.
Well, look at Taco Bell.
Well, yeah, that's my
They're gonna
point.
have to go down.
Well,
Golden Chick is in limits.
Well,
Yeah, Golden Chick's good, except for their drive-through.
so, but what I'm trying to get to, you know, I think we need to be careful of how we quantify the size. Personally, I'd say, shoot, less than one per window, you know, divide them up every other window or something. To me, it's just a matter of clutter. And I think, you know, maybe we didn't have, an ordinance that was easily enforceable, great, that's fine.
well,
But and two, I think we kind of let things slide a little bit as a city, so, you know, I think it goes both ways. But I think, I'm okay with, you know, more enforceable or easily enforceable, but I think generally we need to be really careful about this because we're not gonna get too many more shots at this.
I agree with you 100%.
I think we can take as many shots as we want, but realistically, I don't think we're gonna get too many shots. We're gonna get chaotic in here, you know, out in the city. So I think we need to make a wise decision.
I think looking at all these pictures here is a good array
Mhm.
of what's existing, so I think looking at them, the decision should be made
To me, it's a lot of
by
clutter.
looking at these. So Title Max loans, do you think that's too much?
I'm sorry, say again?
Look at Title Max loans picture. That's their signs, I mean, I can't see with the whole signs covering it, but like the colored one,
Yeah,
that looks great, that looks fine to me, but then on the one side where it says yes, fast cash now, are those signs covering the whole window? It looks like they could be, but
They're not. They're actually.
they're like,
If I recall correctly, they're probably 3 or 4 foot strips across all
yeah,
of those.
so they may
and
be just
granted,
fine.
but does that, yeah, they'd be fine, but does that really look attractive? I don't know.
They don't care, they want to sell.
well, you know,
I know.
I mean, to
But
a
see,
point,
that's
but-
the other side of it.
Jeff, did you have
Well, they
something?
want to sell stuff, and you have to
I
remember
know.
the city wants them to sell stuff too.
Yeah,
Well, you know, here's a radical thought,
yeah, but,
and I'm not really promoting this, but I put it out there. We took as a city dramatic action with signage more generally. We insisted on monument signs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We insisted on it.
Yes.
And so you could make the point, and I just put this out there for discussion really, that stick to what we basically have now and say the type of signage that we see is not in compliance and we don't want it. maybe a very hard sell to tell businesses to take it down, but if they want to be in Helotes and have access to the customers who live here, and who generally know this community, you know, they probably would comply. You'd have to have a phase-in period probably and all that, but my concern is, I think people would do it, but as I look at this, and this is a really good faith effort, I mean, I'm impressed with this, but
Mhm.
I think it's a quagmire. I think this is just gonna be endless work for code compliance and just a lot of stuff to deal with, and I don't know that that serves anybody well, and it probably would irritate businesses to always have code compliance coming in
Walk
about
around
this
with
or
the
that.
yardstick.
I mean, I just put it out there. Maybe the simplest thing is to keep it as simple as possible and say, no. Is Taco Bell gonna lose customers because they're not advertising what they currently are advertising?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
I don't know.
Yeah, do they really pay off?
I don't know that this could be, and this is fine. I mean, I think this is a reasonable effort. I don't have any problem with it, but I just think it's gonna be really difficult to, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
Look at the cash store, their signage, they have the little strips up at the top, which are nice, but
Which
then
one?
cash store, it's 9708. And then they have little signs below on a couple windows, so they can say, okay, well, I'll just cover up 50% of my window then if y'all are gonna, I mean, you know, what's worse? I don't know. They could cover up a lot of those windows instead of having those two individual signs. I don't know. I mean, look at Ballymart, looks pretty bad, but looks like they have a bunch of trash, but it might be reflections there.
I mean, I think if we did go forward with something, and this is a good discussion item now, but I think if we did go forward, in the same way we had developed the design, what we call it, the design standards with examples and all that, this, probably something similar like that would be helpful to people to know, like, this is what we're looking for, this is not what we're looking for. Because a lot of this seems to be very subjective in terms of what counts as a sign and how many and how many, so.
We are struggling partly because different businesses need different kinds of business to get people's attention. A bank versus a restaurant, a service station versus a hospital. So we're struggling with because we're trying to find something that fit all. And that's very difficult to do, to find something that's gonna fit all of them and make it even across the board. On the other hand, it becomes very cumbersome to say we're gonna have this kind of sign for hospital, this kind of sign for bank. So I see this as a never-ending struggle when you start trying to write something that fits the whole city and then have somebody to just drive by and enforce it. If you look at a sign in a window, you might say it's only 50%, it may be 55%. You might say it's 40%, and you know, because of disproportionate size of the window, one's thin, one's tall. I think what we got may be the best thing we can come up with. That's my guess.
When you say what we've got, you mean what's proposed or what's current?
What we have current.
Which,
I think we're also victim's the wrong word, but as a car-centered city, with businesses set back, signs, businesses want their signs to be seen from the highway, right? They gotta be a little bit larger. If you look at many of these, that's what's going on.
Yeah, but given the
That's
setback,
not
a
their
lot
fault.
of these buildings, you're not gonna read it from the window.
And some of it is not to read it, it's to catch your eye.
Well, okay,
You know, in advertisement talk.
okay.
I wonder if some of these stores are regulated by home office, what they display.
Oh, most of the chains are gonna be regulated by a corporate office.
Regulated or just
I don't know.
provided? Say, here you go, here's your, this one sign.
Many will actually be regulated.
Required.
They would be required, or, I'm struggling with this because I wanna respond that if you don't allow window signage, then you will be eliminating our ability to bring additional businesses that are particularly chains into Helotes. Because one of the
Yeah.
first things they look at is sign regulations. We struggle with the wall signage and the monument signage day in and day out, and most of the time, a lot of businesses do not wanna come in because our wall signage regulations are pretty strict. If you look at the cash store is a good example. We allowed them to have two because they're technically facing two different sides of the building. But it's restrictive in the sense, if you look at it, cash stores relatively minimal on that entire wall.
Yeah,
If
the
you go
square
into San
footage, yeah.
Antonio, now I'm not saying, I don't want a cash store in here in Helotes, but I'm just using it as an example. If you go into San Antonio, that cash store sign is gonna be twice or 3 times as big. So when we start saying no to the chairman's word, if we start saying no to window signage, it'd be easy to enforce, but it'd be difficult on the other end of the aisle here at City Hall trying to bring businesses in,
I don't know the answer to
particularly
this.
into tenant spots.
I don't know the answer to this, but I would think the counter to that could be, this is a relatively successful, affluent area that businesses would wanna be, and that they would, deal with the tighter regulations to have access to the clientele. That would be my thought. I don't know if that's true.
Yes, that is correct. Our demographics are great, but our demographics do not beat the amount of people that are in Alamo Ranch and the amount of people that are at the Rim. So we are stuck right in the middle where we have a lot of money, but we don't have enough people yet to drive businesses in the Helotes. So we're competing against Alamo Ranch, which is in San Antonio, that has no restrictions. Well, maybe it'll be in San Antonio. And then of course the Rim. I mean, San Antonio doesn't have a very strict sign code. Obviously, when you drive in San Antonio, you can tell that. So, those are my 2 cents. If you eliminated window signage in its entirety, it would make it extremely difficult for us to bring in more successful businesses that are tried and true, and those typically are gonna be chains. So I'm concerned about tax base at that and sales tax.
And that's fair, but
So the tough one.
that's a fair argument, but I'm just not sure, given it's a successful chain, how much difference that sign in the window would make to that particular facility.
No, you're correct. It probably doesn't. But what I'm telling you is that corporations,
It's a perception thing.
they will not risk coming into Helotes if they know that if the sign code is so restrictive that, they won't do it. Now, some will, I'm not gonna say all won't, but it will be extremely difficult for us to find businesses if we start eliminating window signage and continue to lower the square footage allowed for wall signage. So,
I'd argue against that point because as it's already stated, or as it's supposedly written right now, is a lot more stringent than what's being proposed.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask.
It's maximum of 24 square feet, and then 1 sign per street or pedestrian way which the building faces. That is pretty strict.
I agree with you, but all they have to do is a window survey and they can see that obviously the city isn't enforcing that code.
Right.
Okay, but did Taco Bell do that? Did AutoZone do that? Did they come in and say, well, we don't like this part of the sign code?
Sir, I don't know, but I can tell you that the number 1 criteria for a business locating in this city that's a chain is signage.
Mm-hmm. But we said with a maximum of 2 signs, it says 1 sign per street or pedestrian way, but then it says with a maximum of 2 signs, if they meet that size.
Or if they were on a corner.
If they're on a
We
corner.
could have one.
With, on each okay, so that's what that's.
Are you saying that, you're having problem attracting business because of our current signage rules?
Oh, yes. Every day.
Yeah.
It's not only our sign code, but it's also the traffic volume on Bandera Road, particularly when I get further out past Circle A. Actually, when I get past Houseman, the traffic volumes goes down significantly.
Yeah.
So those 2 factors, the fact that we're outside Loop 1604 and not right in it, near the shopping center, there's a lot of inhibitors to having a business located into Helotes, and if you notice, there are not that many. We are starting to get more and more chains, but when I first arrived in 2006, there were very few chains that I can think of in Helotes. Now, we have had more come here because more growth is occurring out here, that is correct. I'm just giving you food for thought that y'all can do whatever you want, council can do whatever it wants, but at the end of the day, I'm then gonna be asked the question, why don't we have any new businesses coming into Helotes? And it's because we are steering to where we're getting very restrictive on signage and things of that sort. That's gonna be one of the reasons, not the total reason.
Are you
Ron's got a question.
proposing then that, your changes here would loosen that up significantly where you gain a lot of business?
I'm not necessarily saying that this loosens it or makes it more restrictive. I can guarantee you that whatever you adopt, we're gonna start enforcing, which we haven't been enforcing in the past. And it was long before I got here that the city was not enforcing these things. So, whatever you adopt or whatever council adopts, we're gonna start enforcing in a very proactive manner when it comes to window signage.
Rob, you got a question?
On a different subject, I know many places around the country have no tobacco signs. Do we have anything like that?
No. Well, do we have any restrictions on
Right.
tobacco signs? No.
Would it be, tell me what you think of this idea, it's probably a bad idea, but I'll say it anyway.
I would love not
What
to.
would happen if we surveyed existing businesses about, just generally about window signage? About how they would, you know, what their, I'm just thinking out loud here about, if we were.
I don't think that would be a terrible idea. We can certainly, utilize Glenn with our Economic Development Corporation to send out those letters.
Because we don't, I mean, this certainly would have the appearance of being antagonistic to business to start enforcing anything like this. To be successful, you'd really want to have buy-in from your businesses. So it would be interesting to know their perspective on this, on window signage in general. Do they do it because they have to, because corporate says they have to? Do they find that it helps, you know, that it drives business? Just to get a sense of what we're, you know, what our constituents, meaning the business constituents, you know, how they look on the issue. I mean,
It would not be difficult for us to do that. So if that is something commission
I mean,
wishes to do before it takes action on anything, we can do that.
That's an excellent idea.
That's a very, yeah, to get feedback.
And some businesses are just lazy, so they just leave a bunch of junk up and never clean up their windows, and they just keep putting stuff on there, I think. But, I mean, most of them are very intentional and clean, but, so.
would it be possible for next time, I mean, this is gonna take, I don't think we're ready to act on this tonight, but would it be possible maybe to, for next time, to, maybe develop some sort of instrument for asking questions of business, and maybe we can talk about that here before actually surveying them, or how would you recommend if we were to do that proceeding? Do you want specific direction from us on questions, or?
No, I mean, I think that we are, I think that we have the capability to come up with a good questionnaire in-house and send that out over the course of the next month so that we're not delaying action on this item further. Because I know that there are some council people that are concerned about this issue. So, I would recommend, I would prefer to do it that way, and work with you, Chair, to send you the draft of what we're sending out, and you approve that before we send it out, if the rest of the commission is okay with that.
What are their concerns?
What
is city council's concern? That we're looking at this? That we're thinking of
well,
enforcing it?
No, I think the issue is that they're happy that you're looking at it. I think it's been needed to be looked at for some time. It's the enforcement side of it. I know the mayor is, concerned as to why I haven't sent our code enforcement officer out yet, but I had to explain to him we had the conversation with P and Z, and that we're sort of taking a thorough look at this before we go out there rampant. Because I mean, I literally would have to go to almost every business.
And they've been wanting you to enforce what is existing right
I
now?
haven't addressed this with council. I mean, the councilman was, I have not addressed
I was
this
just
with
wondering, cause
council,
you
but I
said they're
have heard-
concerned, I was just wondering what,
I have heard,
do they want it stricter than this? Cause it, and
I have
they
not
just
received
want
any,
this
I have not
enforced?
received any feedback as to which way they would like to go on this, other than I have had some concerns brought forth through the mayor that there may be some concerns that we're not looking at this quick enough. So that's why I wanna get this thing rolling, done, so we can send it to council and then start enforcing it as quickly as we can. But I do believe that the survey of businesses, you may like or not like what you hear, but I think that
Yeah.
the survey would be beneficial.
It's not
At least
fair-
then the city would then be able to say that we surveyed the business community, see
Yes.
what they're.
And it's really not fair to make you speak for council, we got Alex. Can you maybe speak to this a little bit? I mean, it's not fair to Rick.
Sure. Rick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick is correct, this has not come before anything as far as council, and, while I have expressed some concerns to Rick about the enforcement going back several months, he has explained to me that there's a process going on and we're gonna get there and all that. spoken with any other council members on this topic to get the feel for that. I try real hard not to violate the Open Meetings Act by trying to make these discussions in advance of what shows up, however frustrating it is. I think that ours is very restrictive. I think, we're asking for my opinion, and, I know this will eventually get there, but, and I'm not trying to sway your deliberation. I think that we have some room for relaxing a little bit in some capacity. I'm concerned that as we do it in such a way to be equitable to all businesses. And as I start to take a look at some of the I was writing a couple little notes here. We have a lot of businesses that have what I call a faux window. It's not a window at all. It's just a pane of glass. So do we count that as a window and give some of them, like the ones that you've mentioned, 17, even though we know there's nothing on the other side of that glass, but the back side of the cabinet? Is that really a window or not? That would say a tendency to maybe limit the total amount of window signage to the size of the building rather than the number of the windows. Because if you start counting windows, you reward the businesses that divide their windows into 4 versus the one who has a large pane of glass. I would also say that yes, I think a survey of the businesses is very important. Again, you may or may not like the answer you get, but what you may very well find is that you got a whole lot of businesses out there that are really doing their best to comply with everything that we put out, and they're now going to feel slighted by the fact that that everybody else has been getting away with stuff for a long time, and they didn't take advantage of that opportunity. So I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of businesses who come religiously to the city, and they say, "Does it meet code?" No. Oh, well, then they don't do it, and they go away. And I think that we have to be fair to allow everybody the opportunity to do that. I was questioning, and this doesn't say, and I'm going to give you some more thought for what to do. Do we want to have anything to say about inside versus outside? Okay, typically a business is going to put a window sign up on the inside, but if you can't get to the inside, do we now all of a sudden say it can be scotch taped to the outside? Sandra's comment about the look of it. If we go with the square footage, I can envision somebody putting up 8.5 by 11 sheets, and okay, well, I've got a window. Maybe the window starts here and it goes to 15 feet off the ground. Yeah, I don't have to go 8 feet, but everything up to 8 feet is covered with a patchwork or a checkerboard of little bitty advertisements, maybe even just a newspaper advertisement, and that gets stuck in the window as well. Is that acceptable? I don't know. I think we've spent a great deal of time as a city trying to regulate signs to, like Mike said, to make it look less cluttered and to be more friendly in that sense. Certainly not to drive away the business, but we want to balance the two issues. The height is one of those questions. If we're going to limit to 8 feet, does the window above 8 feet count? And they can only put the ones below. The sign has to be below 8 feet, or is the whole window? I don't know. I'm not really sure how you measure that. But we do have a lot of businesses with multiple panes of window, and does that mean that they get a patchwork? I don't know how you work that, and I don't know how our code enforcement people would work that. That gets to be really complicated. As far as council, no, this hasn't come to council at all. And I think it's all just a matter of making a great recommendation coming out of here, and I guarantee there'll be a lively discussion at council when that time comes. Sometimes they get really lively. Most of the time they're not. But, so that would be my thought. Is I don't know how you want to modify that. As to what I think it's a very well thought out presentation. 50% of every window on every wall seems to me a bit counter to what the direction P&Z has done to work on the wall signs. I mean, we have very good rules on how many square feet of wall signing is based on the size of the building, right? And then to say, well, they can't have one wall sign, but they can have 17 window signs as long as the entire wall is windows, that becomes a little, but we don't even do that in Old Town. So I think there has to be a balance between that, and I think we can strike a balance that businesses and chains will still come here. I really do. I think it's going to take a lot of thought to kind of look at that. Not just the existing businesses, but look at the businesses that don't have signs up too, and find out why it's working for them. Or Are they that, like Joe said, are they that big of a difference in a business that it doesn't really matter? Or is it that they found another way to make it work? I don't know. My thoughts.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah.
To add on what Councilman Blue was saying, I think we go to great lengths to have a certain look and, I'll say it again, a certain look and feel to the city, the hill country, whatever you want to call it, the country. There's an architecture, and I think to try to wedge a window ordinance, let's call it, sign ordinance into that, irrespective of the architecture, I think we're going to do disservice to both in some way. So I agree with, you know, the balance in there. Personally, I don't like any of the window signs. I think you'd have a beautiful business if I could see inside, I can see the products, I can see the stores neat. I don't know. That's just me.
Well, I think,
But there's a balance.
unless people want to keep going on this, I think that is their general agreement with the approach of allowing staff to develop a survey that I would review, and then they would send around to existing businesses, either all or at least a representative sample, whatever's easiest. And, you know, if it's done in a quick enough fashion, we can perhaps have it before us in November.
What is the urgency, or why have you been feeling an urgency on this? Because because it's been brought up and now they want something done, or because they feel like this needs to be enforced?
I was not.
I'm just wondering.
Honestly, when I drive down the road, I think I was probably very similar to many of y'all in the sense you drove past a lot of these businesses for multiple number of years and never noticed the amount of wall sign or window signs. I am not a code enforcement officer, and that's all I would be doing every day if I went around the city looking for code violations. That is not my job. So when I present to y'all that we have all of these issues, I myself feel a little obligated to address them. And I think we are addressing them, but I just wish that it was happening quicker. So the hesitation is probably just me knowing that I have some issues out there that we need to correct. But I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it now, and in a month have a completely different ordinance either. I mean, I think that's going to send the wrong message to the business community as well. So, I would just stress that the quicker we can get this done, and the better.
Well, I mean, we could talk about this
But within
later,
reason, I mean,
we don't
we'll
need to
make
show this to the city businesses. It's not really to ask them about necessarily about a specific. I mean, I don't know, unless you think that's worthwhile, I don't know that you need to ask them about specific.
If you ask them about a 50% over your windows, they're gonna say, no, we want 60.
I mean, I would just think more general type of.
Yeah.
We will put together questions, and then we will send those to you, and we'll have you make the final call, Chairman.
Can I ask one other thing? This would be apart from that. Can you get some sort of feedback from our code staff about their thoughts about what enforcement of this would do, what it would be like? I mean, they're the ones in the street every day working with businesses and everybody else with a variety of enforcement issues. So if this were to become an issue, I mean, if they think it, you know, they're gonna look for a job the next day because this goes into effect, or they relish the opportunity. I mean, it'd be nice to know what they think too, because they're the ones really on the front lines who are gonna have to deal with whatever we recommend and they approve.
I'll give you just a little joke here. Every time they go to a business, say, well, I guess that's another place I'm not gonna be able to eat for lunch.
Well, you eat lunch first.
All right. Thank you, Rick, for the presentation. Alex,
Yeah,
for the
thank you for
comments.
doing all that.
And we're just gonna send that back to staff.
Yeah, that's still ongoing discussion. At this time, we can have a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Rod,
may I make a motion to adjourn?
is there a second?
Second.
Michael, all in favor of adjourning, signal aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned at 8:20.